Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. For a while now, all we've been hearing about is the coronavirus. How we all have to change the way we do things, the precautions we have to observe. Our world has changed, and it seems like it's happened almost overnight. Some things, though, haven't changed. As has been the case for as long as people have walked the earth, bad intentions, evil behavior, victimization of the innocent, the unsuspecting, it continues. Never has the bad part of humanity practiced social distancing. And last month, there were over 30 overdose deaths in our community just because of drugs being abused. On top of all our other more recent concerns, we still have to deal with the devil. I suppose we can look at it philosophically. If there was no evil in this world, no bad, then how would we ever appreciate the goodness, kindness, the acts of love and care that we see so much of? I guess the point is, we're all consumed with a microscopic enemy whose job it is to make us sick. We can't forget, though, the bigger picture, the human-sized enemy that is constantly there to remind us that God made this world a dangerous place for whatever reason. That's a topic for another show. But while you're listening to presidents and governors and the news media telling you all about the natural little enemy, don't be distracted. Continue to be aware of that bigger human enemy called evil. Now, before we all start hiding somewhere in a dark corner, be assured not all is lost. Those acts of kindness and care that I mentioned, well, this is one of those times when that side of the human race really shines. Give people a chance to help someone in trouble, and most of us, especially here in Western New York, will bring a brightness to the day that makes the sun, that we seldom see here, look like a firefly. So let's talk about some of these things with a guy who is here to make sure that at least some of our defenses and our vigilance, if you will, continues. Now with me on The Big Picture, I'm privileged to introduce the United States Attorney for the Western District of New York, James Kennedy.
Phil,
and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot to talk about. Things going on, scams and opportunities for bad behavior and criminals. It's an opportunity. When things change like this, they come out with very creative ways to cheat people.
Right. And as you said in your introduction, I think, it's an opportunity for tremendous good, but it is also an opportunity for people of that mind to do tremendous harm. And so we've seen that, and we're protecting against that. And, certainly Attorney General Barr has been very forward-leaning in terms of trying to get us to be proactive so as to protect our communities, which is really the responsibility that I share with the other 93 United States attorneys in the United States. And our staff is really up to the task. We've been very busy, although working under different circumstances. Many of our attorneys are teleworking, but in federal court, unlike the state system, we continue to work. We continue to have investigations. We continue to have prosecutions. We are doing, albeit somewhat in different manner, some of the ways that we're going about doing things. We're conducting arraignments via teleconferencing, things like that. But I want the public to know that we remain vigilant in our effort to protect them and, as you say, to harm and combat the evil that we see across our society.
On the federal level, what kinds of things do you guys look into? Is price gouging, is that one of the things?
Absolutely. So it's been sort of rolled out so far, at least generally from DC in three phases. The first involved just COVID-related fraud, sort of the traditional internet scams that we've seen, whether it's phishing, fake emails, efforts to basically gain access to individuals' personal identifying information, PII, or to their bank account information, so that that people can do preying, as you say, sort of on the panic that seems to have washed over our country in many instances, preying upon sort of the people's insecurity to have them make decisions that they might not otherwise make in terms of providing information in hopes of, whether it's getting a cure, certain personal protective devices, PPE, personal protective equipment, preying on those sorts of fears and desires to be able to obtain information. And then it's also phishing scams where, you download an attachment or something to an email, and it then gives the bad actor access to your computer. So that's sort of the first thing that we saw. And then we saw the next thing was sort of the price gouging and the hoarding. And we saw how there was shortages of certain materials, and individuals were not only stockpiling them for themselves, which is not a crime, but where individuals were taking advantage so as they could gain personal financial gain by sort of taking in these items and then selling them at a very high price. So the Attorney General, we then, in the first instance, as I mentioned earlier, we started our COVID-19 fraud coordinator, and I, just like all other 93 U.S. attorneys, selected one of our prosecutors to head up that task force, and then we had a anti-hoarding and price gouging task force set up with another assistant United States attorney. So as to coordinate, because as you know, many of these actors don't just operate in one geographic area, especially in the age of the internet. Many times these criminals are from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. Yeah,
I'm sure that different scams and different bad things happen to types of people. Yes. I find myself getting emails saying that my order was shipped or that my payment was processed, and I think, wait, I didn't make that payment, or I'm not sure what they're referring to, and I'm almost tempted to click on something, right. And then I realize, wait a second, this is probably not a good idea to click on anything. So if I could be victimized, it's not just the elderly or the people who are unsuspecting. Almost anybody is susceptible to those kinds of things.
Absolutely. We're living, a month ago, this was all, no one knew what COVID-19 was, and no one knew, PPE, personal protective equipment, all these sorts of things it's all new to us. So as we're learning new things, I think the human mind is inquisitive, and oftentimes it's very normal to maybe click to try and learn something. And unfortunately, to the unsuspecting, you just need to be very careful. Rather than clicking on links in emails or on Facebook or on Twitter or any other form of social media, my suggestion is, go to the website, go to the government.gov website or whatever, enter it in Google, and you can actually, rather than clicking on a link, because sometimes they can mask where you're actually being connected to. And the third thing, though, too, that we've seen since the start of this crisis, and the most recent thing is now under the CARES Act, where the president signed, where most individuals are going to get refund and money. The IRS is responsible for rolling that out, and within the next couple of days, I think the checks are going to start, or at least the direct deposits are going to start being made. So individuals should be aware that the IRS has access through our tax returns to our bank account information, our personal identifying information. They will not reach out to you and ask you to verify a bank account. They will not reach out to you and ask you to verify certain personal information. If you're getting it direct deposit, it will be through whatever bank accounts associated with your return if you file electronically. So, just be cautious. If the government's asking you the government is not going to be asking you for information, basically, bottom line. And so if someone does, it's probably a scam. If you have a question, visit irs.gov or call the IRS directly.
Well, I guess bottom line is you have to be vigilant. You have to, it's tough to go around this world 24/7 suspecting that you're going to be a victim. But right. That's what criminals count on. They count on people not realizing that there's danger out there, and they take advantage of that.
Right, letting your guard down. I think that's the thing. You can't, and that's sort of the one of the messages that I've tried to put out there is with the sort of breathless 24/7 coverage of this, I think, you know, it tends to wear on people. And it may, you know, it causes fear, it causes panic, and, you know, in some cases it causes desperation. We're going to talk about in a few minutes, I'm sure, about some of the opioids and the overdoses. But I think, you know, part of the ancillary effect of this sort of nonstop coverage is that people get fearful, they get worn down, they let down their guard. And so I think that we need to remain vigilant. I always say that, you know, our founding fathers started this country with the idea of self-governance. And what self-governance means today, I think incorrectly, is it's a manner, you know, it's often used to characterize how we go about electing our officials. But really, what the founding fathers had in mind when they talked about self-governance was our ability to control and regulate our own behavior. So ultimately, it is on us as Americans to you know, use our common sense and to use our tools that we have in terms of our intellect and our relationships with people to be able to do what we can to protect ourselves and actually to control our own behavior, to live morally. And, you know, unfortunately, I think that sometimes we lose sight of that fact, but events like this can be an opportunity, as you said earlier, to sort of bring us back to sort of what the fundamentals of our country, what it really means to engage in self-governance and to live morally and to live a good life.
Now, your job as a United States Attorney is to prosecute and help protect the people, but prosecute evildoers and the people who break the laws. How likely is it, or how easy is it, to catch or punish or prosecute these scam artists? I mean, many of them are probably overseas because of the internet, and there's no local crime as much as there used to be. It's now could be anywhere.
That's true, and although I have to say with our partners in the FBI, DHS, and really all levels of state and local law enforcement, I think that's another thing that we need to remember here too, is that they're on the front lines every day fighting the fight. And I think that, you know, a few years ago, law enforcement really took it on the chin. They were blamed for a lot of the source of sort of many of the evils in this country. And I think that, you know, fortunately, in times like this, we recognize how much we really do depend on law enforcement and what a terrific job that they do. And, you know, just as with our, you know, medical community and sort of those front lines, well, you know, individuals in law enforcement on the front lines every day, and we need to, you know, whether it's MS-13 or COVID-19, there are many dangers that we're facing, and we need to, you know, be grateful for our law enforcement professionals along with our medical professionals that are on the front line. But I mean, we're pretty good, actually, to answer your question, pretty good at, you know, conducting these investigations on the internet. We have some experience now, and we see a lot of what we do now. Every individual, every criminal basically has a computer on them in the form of a cell phone. Mm-hmm. So we've now become accustomed, you know, I've been in the office 28 years now, just over 28 years. And so I've sort of evolved from pagers to, you know, and to different technologies evolved, and we've had to evolve too. And so I can tell you this, for example, just last Friday, an individual named Christopher Paris, a 39-year-old gentleman down in Atlanta, Georgia, was arrested and charged with by the Department of Veteran Affairs, their investigation, as he tried to basically sell 135 million face masks to the VA for $750 million. Well, there were no face masks. He was arrested. But ironically, and perhaps not so ironically, but not describing maybe the character of the individual more than anything else, in January, my office charged Mr. Paris in a Ponzi scheme in Rochester involving $115 million and over 1,000 victims. So he was on release in that case. And so what we were able to do because of our coordinated effort, when he was arrested down in Atlanta, I received a call. He was arrested in Atlanta, being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia. I received a call from the District of Columbia asking whether we could revoke his bail so that he would remain detained and in custody during the pendency of this new case, and we were fortunately able to do that. So it is sort of working together with our partners in law enforcement. We're able to coordinate our efforts so that we can apprehend these individuals and bring them to justice.
Yeah, sure. Well, as always happens, things go by quickly. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about various things. Who should ask for your Social Security number? What agency should you contact if you suspect something is wrong? A lot of interesting questions to talk about. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.